Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Better Together webinar. My name is Julian Lute, and on behalf of Great Place to Work, we're happy that you could join us, whether this is your first time or you've been with us before. This week's Better Together conversation features not one, but two CEOs who lead organizations that clearly understand what it means to create great workplaces for all, even during unprecedented times. The ongoing response to both COVID-19 and Racism 2020 demands that demonstrative and accountable leadership. So we trust that this week's conversation will show you what it looks like to take action. Let's get right into it. A few housekeeping notes. We look forward to your questions, so please submit them in the questions panel. Our colleagues will field the questions and we'll do our absolute best to answer them. We'll be recording the session, so we'll send along the deck and the recording within 48 hours. I'm incredibly honored to introduce Kirt Walker. Kirt serves as the Chief Executive Officer of Nationwide, a mutual insurance and financial services company focused on protecting people, businesses, and futures with extraordinary care. He was elected to this position in 2019 and also serves as a member of the Nationwide Board of Directors. After joining the Nationwide family of companies in 1986, Mr. Walker held several key leadership positions prior to becoming CEO, most recently having served as President and Chief Operating Officer of Nationwide Financial. He also served as President of Property and Casualty Exclusive Operations and President of Allied Insurance, Nationwide's independent agency channel. Now, Nationwide has been named to the 100 Best Companies to Work For every year since 2015. So that's 6 years in a row. They are a recognized best workplace in their industry, as a company that cares, and for diversity. And if you look into their For All experience, Nationwide creates incredibly consistent experiences between men and women, most notably around soliciting ideas and caring about them as people. In just 2020, check out these wins. Nationwide has been recognized as number 35 on People's Company That Care 2020, number 19 in Fortune's Best Workplaces in Financial Services and Insurance, and number 91 on the Fortune 100 Best Companies to Work For. Welcome. We also want to welcome Aneel Bhusri. Aneel is the co-founder and co-CEO at Workday. He is also a member of the company's board of directors and served as chairman of the board from January 2012 until May 2014. Aneel has been a product visionary and innovator in the software industry for more than 20 years. Before Workday, Aneel held a number of leadership positions at PeopleSoft, and in addition to his role at Workday, Aneel is an advisory partner at Greylock, a leading venture capital firm. He also serves on the board of directors at the Workday Foundation and of the Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. Now, Workday has been named to the 100 Best Companies to Work For 6 years in a row, also reaching number 5 this past year. They're a best workplace in their industry, as a company that cares, for diversity, for parents, and across the world. They also pay special attention to ensure a gender balance amongst their executive team. And in just 2020, Workday has been recognized as number 3 on the Fortune Best Workplaces in Technology, number 5 in Fortune 100 Best Companies to Work For, and number 8 in Fortune Best Workplaces in the Bay Area. Kirt and Aneel will be joined in conversation by our CEO, Michael Bush. So thank you all for joining us today. And without any further ado, Michael, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Julian. I don't know where my photo is for the viewing audience, but I'm sitting between two great leaders, that's for sure. And you're in good hands today. So the thing that brings us all together, everybody who joined us today, as well as the leaders and the about 42,000 employees that they represent, is our unified mission to create a great place to work for all. So that's what brings us together. That's what gets all of us up every day, and to make sure that we do that in a way that's better for business, better for people, better for the communities, and better for the world. And the reason we started the Better Together series is because we know that during times of trouble, and this has been a tumultuous year, that organizations that have a high trust culture financially outperform those who don't, based on the decisions that they made during these tough times. And so we have data that you're taking a look at now, which shows in 2008, 2009, people who put their people first and people who took care of their people through those tough times came out and are financially performing first of all, they got to recovery faster, and then their recovery was better and stronger. And right now, it's amazing. As we look at our survey results, companies that came into COVID in a strong way, their surveys over the past couple of months, their scores are actually higher. Companies that were weak a year ago, their scores are actually weaker. So how we treat our people really pays off. The other thing about places that are great places to work for all, like Nationwide and like Workday, is they make sure that they think about everybody in the organization, and they know at the time of restructuring that there are some groups, primarily historically underrepresented groups, that if you don't pay attention, you can make decisions that set back your diversity and inclusion improvements a decade. So they are mindful, it's in the front of their minds, and they make sure that as they're making restructuring decisions, which all businesses have to do periodically, that they don't lose the gains to make sure they keep the diversity that they need, because diversity drives innovation. So as we move into our session, Kirt, first, I'd just like to ask you, number one, your timing's remarkable to become a CEO about a year ago, and what a year you've had. So welcome. It can only get better for you, though. It can only get better. I mean, your best days are clearly ahead of you. But if you could let the audience know more about Nationwide and what Nationwide does, just so they have for some context from you that'll help them hear you today.
Yeah, well, thank you for that, Michael, and thanks for having me here today. And one of the things that we focus on at Nationwide is breaking things down and simplifying. So let me try to break down who Nationwide is. We're a protection business, and that's stated in our mission. We protect people, businesses, and futures with extraordinary care, bottom line. We have a full range of insurance and financial services. What makes us unique is we would be, if standalone, number 120 on the Fortune rankings for our property casualty business. So think about auto, home, businesses, farm, agriculture, and we'd be number basically 120 on the financial services side, life, annuities, retirement plans, mutual funds. So we have this unique, diverse portfolio. But really, what makes us special, if you think about what makes us special, it's our culture of caring, right? That's one of the things that brought me here, has kept me here. We think it's a big part of our competitive advantage. One of the things that we do every year is we celebrate people for their tenure. You know, a lot of people came here for a job and stayed for a career and a lifestyle. So here's a couple of fun factoids. We have 2,575 associates out of our 28,000 associates who have been here 25 years or more. Of that group, 223 of them have been here 40 years or more. And we actually have 4 associates still active with us that have been here for 50 years or more. So I just think fortitude is what Nationwide's all about. It's at the top of our list. You know, Nationwiders have adapted to any situation. 2020 being a great example. We've got people with great work ethic, commitment to serving our members, because we're a mutual insurance company with extraordinary care. So that's who Nationwide is.
Okay, Kirt. Yeah, and I know you're an overnight success yourself with 35 years. I would have thought, you know, but you have a lot of people standing up after you based on that record. And we have a survey question. Do you want to work here a long time? And there's evidence that people want to work at Nationwide a long time. And we know what it takes for that to be true. So that's remarkable. And Aneel, if you could let our audience know what Workday does.
Well, first of all, it's great to be with you, Michael, and great to be with you, Kirt. So Workday is a cloud provider of human resources, financials, planning, and analysis software, really focused on Fortune 500 and complex organizations. I'd say maybe Fortune 2000 organizations. We were started in 2005 on the heels of the Oracle takeover of PeopleSoft. My co-founder and I were the two folks that decided we needed to reinvent what was happening with ERP software, start with a clean sheet of paper, embrace the cloud, following my friend Mark Benioff. And the first thing we did when we started the company was actually to settle on a value system, even before we wrote a single line of code. Number 1 on that value system was employees. Number 2, customers. I know a lot of people always say customers are number 1. I've never seen a company that has unhappy employees and happy customers. And so we really, just like Kirt, we really focus on creating a great work environment for our employees. And then we task them and encourage them to take care of our customers. And today we're 15 years later, we're 12,000 employees. 60% of the Fortune 50 runs Workday, almost 50% of the Fortune 500. And we're very proud of being high on all of your lists. You know, being a great place, being on that list, it's not just a great thing for the company. I also say it's fun. It's infectious. When your employees realize that you're a great place to work, they lean in and want to make it an even better place to work. And so it's been a real treat to get to know you over the years, Michael, and actually have you recently join our board of directors.
Well, thank you, Aneel. And just for our listening audience, the good news is I'm on the board. The bad news is they can't be on our list anymore. But they've got a reputation. Also, last year being number 10 on our world's best list. And Kirt, just to add to Nationwide, I think $43.9 billion of revenue, number 7 on the Fortune 500, the 74th largest business in America. So that's important context. So moving into our world today. So first, I want to talk about the first virus, which is COVID-19, and Kirt, starting with you, what's really happened over the past 7 months at Nationwide to make sure you've taken care of your people during this time?
Yeah, so one of the things that we talked about earlier, we're a protection company, but we're also a risk management company. It's what we help people to do, and we need to be really good at it ourselves. For over 10 years, we have done crisis simulation, crisis planning. It's involved our executives, it's involved our boards, it's involved our associates. But honestly, we had never planned for a global pandemic. But what we found was, by taking the other things that we had, moving them together, we could make this happen. So we've been planning for a major business interruption of some sort. So we had a plan in place. And once the pandemic hit, people were our first priority, right? We're a values-based company. Our number one priority is we value people. We said, we've got to get people safe so they can continue to protect and provide services to our members. So in 4 days, we transitioned nearly 28,000 associates, 100% work from home. So thank goodness we had the technology and we had the planning. And then what we said was, okay, now we've got to make sure we keep people informed. So we did weekly emails. We also started to do regular live town halls. And what we said was, you vote on what questions you want. And as the CEO and as a management team, we will take them in the order that you present them. We will not ignore a single question. Doesn't matter how hard it is, how real it is, we will take it on. We would have over 20,000 associates that would dial into our town halls. And I'm just really proud of the transparency that we showed. No question was off limits. The other thing that we recognized early on is, people were going to go through some unusual times. One of the things that we put together was a pandemic policy. So we gave all of our associates up to 4 additional weeks of time off to care for family members, take care of their mental health. One of the things that that the world faces is, how do you take care of kids who are home during child care hours? How do you take care of kids who are at home who are participating in school virtually? And that was a big thing to us, and that continues. So we have an associate assistance program. Hey, if you're having a time of need, come to us, we'll help you out. We have mindfulness Mondays, wellness Wednesdays, and we also, from our foundation, donated $5 million to local and national charities. We used our headquarters and lit up the side of it by turning lights on and off in offices to send stay safe messages. So it was a really big deal to us, and now we're planning for the re-entry. The pandemic has changed a lot of work habits, behaviors, accelerated hybrid work models, and that's what we'll ultimately do. So about 18% of our associates were work from home before the pandemic. Ultimately, we're going to have people that work permanently from home. At one point, it'll probably be at 50%, and that will be forever. We'll have another 25% that will work in the office permanently, and then we'll have a hybrid group, people that will work from home for a week, come into the office for a week, work from home for 2 weeks, come into the office for 2 weeks. We need to do that for social distancing, but also for collaboration, communication, and teamwork. So you're right. There's been a lot of things go on in the last 7 months. I'm really proud of. I think we got most of the things right.
Yeah, a nice year one, Kirt. Nice year one. And Aneel, can you share some of the things that Workday's done around COVID-19?
Sure. I have a feeling that my answers throughout the session are going to be very similar to Kurt's. We fell back on our value system immediately. The first thing we had to deal with was a 5,000 person sales kickoff meeting in Florida. And it was in late February, early March. And we just said, no, we're not going to take the chance. And this is before COVID really reared its ugly head. And I got criticized on CNBC for being, too quick to cancel it. Turns out it was the right thing to do, because again, it comes back to taking care of our employees. Went to work from home model relatively quickly. We weren't built for work from home, but being a cloud vendor, you can work from home, and that's the power of that technology. And I think all the cloud vendors have benefited from having built their technologies and their applications in a way that make it easy to work from home. The second thing we did was we gave every employee in the company below VP level a 2-week bonus, because as Kirt mentioned, we knew there were going to be issues. Maybe one of the spouses or significant others would lose a job, taking care of elderly parents, taking care of kids. They would need that financial wherewithal. So what we tried to do up front was just get the minds of the employees back to worrying about taking care of their family, and then they could take care of our customers. We invested in mental health technologies. It is a huge issue. It's going to continue to be a huge issue. And then we turned our attention to taking care of customers. And very proud of the fact that we support some of the essential workers in this country and in all countries. Companies like FedEx, UPS, Walmart, Whole Foods. They're all Workday customers. Home Depot, and they depend on us to make sure our systems work so they can pay their people on time and manage their people and can be on the front lines of taking care of all of us. And so we snapped into that mode, and then that led us further into partnerships like we've done with Salesforce.com around Work.com, which is really a joint offering from Salesforce and Workday to enable companies to smartly work their way back into the office. So it's been a long 7 months. I think our company is the better for it. I do hope that we can get back to some level of normalcy soon, and I'm most worried about the mental health of our employees, especially parents with young children at home. That seems to be the particular group that's most challenged right now.
And you know something about that yourself.
Yeah, I got a 2-year-old at home. She might pop in here at any moment. Sometimes she does.
Well, yeah, if she does, she'll be welcome. And so those amazing responses. So people who are listening are like, okay, now I know why they have these two leaders, on the session. And yeah, a lot of similarities, because when you're people first, you're going to work, a certain way, and you're going to make decisions that aren't on a spreadsheet. You're going to make decisions because of the values, which is what you both described. And then, just want to move to really, our current day, which I think the lightning rod point for everyone was George Floyd's murder. And I actually this morning started my day with some Black employees, not at your companies, at another company in the Netherlands and South Africa, talking about racism in their countries. So this issue, people want to think it's a U.S. issue. As you both know, this isn't a U.S. issue. This is truly a global issue. But when the world got rocked, Kirt, I'll start with you. What did you do? Your people aren't together, but what did you do, both within the walls of Nationwide to take care of your people, and then outside of Nationwide, based on, the tragic murder and how it affected, I think, absolutely everyone.
Yeah. I don't know what word you use to describe the George Floyd murder other than devastating, right? I mean, it hurt us to our core here. One of the things that we all reinforce to each other, there is no place for that kind of hatred and violence in America, and there certainly isn't any at Nationwide. So I think those images are just burned in all of our minds, and they've shed light on all these opportunities that are out there before us. And we think we've done a pretty good job at Nationwide. We've got miles to go before we sleep as well. And I think it's ultimately going to lead to positive change. And it's sad that it's taken that, but I'm optimist. I'm an optimist. And I think there's going to be this change in human spirit and willingness to engage constructively. And here's what we did. We said, we need to hear what's going on in our associates' hearts and minds. We want to listen to a range of perspectives. And the first thing that we did was we started to have virtual community conversations. We said, let's just talk about these things. Nothing's off the plate. Let's talk about the recent events. Let's talk about our personal perspectives. Let's talk about our path forward. And two things really came up. And one of them was the fact that people said, I don't know how to have a conversation, right? I don't want to be seen as a bigot or unread. I don't know how to have the conversation. Can you help me to do that? And then the other thing was, what can I do personally? Don't know how to have the conversation. Then what can I do personally? So we actually have associate resource groups here, and we got the groups together and said, you're the front line, you're the bottom line, help us. And so what we did is we put together what we called Catalyst for Change sessions. And we invited people virtually to come in, and we had civic leaders from across the country come in, and it represented a broad range of things going on in the world. We also put together what we called our Social Justice Task Force. Again, it wasn't managers, it wasn't leaders, it was associates that came together, and we said, you need to share with us what you think that we could do differently as a company, what we can do differently as a country. And we also had a Standing in Unity Moving Forward Together event. We just took all the associates virtually and physically and went to a big open arena area that we have here. And we just said, we're not going to allow this to happen. We announced a $1 million donation for social justice. So the NAACP, the Legal Defense Fund, the Bail Project, and others. And the other thing that we did is we've made a commitment to the National Fair Housing Alliance. They have a program called Keys Unlock Dreams Initiative. At Nationwide, we believe that Americans deserve a safe and affordable place to call home. So that's a little bit of the tip of what we're trying to do to make a difference here. But we are going to base our outcomes on deeds, not words, and the actions will continue and continue. So thanks for the opportunity to weigh in on that, Michael.
Sure, thank you, and thanks for what you're doing. Aneel, same for you at Workday. Go back to that moment and bring us to the current time.
Well, once again, my answer is going to be remarkably similar to Kirt's. The first thing we did after that devastating moment was engage our employees. We did a series of town halls for all of our employees where we addressed what we thought was right and what we needed to do as a company. And as Kirt said, it's about actions, it's not about words. And then I personally and the rest of the management team began to sit down with our employee belonging councils, especially our Black Council, the Talented 10th, and the Latinx Council. And we had very candid conversations about the world at large, where Workday could do a better job. I learned a lot during those sessions. I do think Workday is a place that really does well on diversity and inclusion, but it came about that we could do better, especially in areas like mentoring. Black employees didn't feel like they had the same mentoring opportunities that maybe their peers did. After that, after sitting down and first addressing all employees, then sitting down with the belonging councils, we then took action in three different ways. Number one, we are giving away $10 million across the board for social justice. A lot of where we can have an impact is job creation. As an HR software provider, we can help companies reskill, retrain, bring new people into the workforce through organizations like Year Up. So that was number one, was the gift coming from our company and our foundation. The second was to create an accelerator team. So we took 20 people, a very diverse group, representing all parts of the company and all races, and they're 100% dedicated to building a set of recommendations over the next 12 months that we'll take action on to become a better company in terms of diversity and inclusion. And part of that is we measure it through something we call VIBE. And Michael, you're aware of this, and the VIBE index: value, inclusion, belonging, and equity. And we can have a way of measuring that within the company. And then the third thing, because we are an HR software company, we said, well, why don't we just share what we're doing with VIBE with all of our customers? So what all of our customers will ultimately get is a set of diversity and inclusion tools, no additional charge, as part of the offering, but would enable companies, not just Workday, but all of our customers, which represents 50 million employees across the globe. We can all be better, and you can't get better unless you measure it first. And so we're bringing out these reports and analytics for companies to measure and improve, the outcomes for people of color.
And that's going to be remarkable, especially the benchmarking opportunity for companies to take a look at how they compare to others. We all know the benefit that comes from that. And part of the Better Together series is that we know that from our work that it all starts at the top. And we always say that. Whenever I say that to leaders like both of you, you both say, no, it's really my team. And so that's when we know we're talking to a for-all leader. But the top matters. The top actually matters because people follow. And so people want to know about really the commitment from the top, and whether or not it's going to be important to their career if they follow and do certain things, which is living out the values of the company and more. And both of your companies, as looking at the 100 best at that list of companies, have the most diverse boards. And I know you both are still working on that, but still, the fact is there's a connection between that and the experience that employees have. And but I'd like to ask both of you to talk about, where you're sitting now, and I know, Gail King is a great friend and one of the most remarkable Black executives in America, Kirt, on your team. And, but I also know you're not done, and same thing for you, Aneel, which, done a lot of remarkable things. And right now, I think in terms of gender diversity, the most diverse top team in America is currently at Workday. And those things, especially in technology, you got to decide you want to do it. So, but as you're sitting where you're sitting and you look forward, I'll start with you, Kirt. What are you thinking about around your team and the pipeline for others to get to your team in the future?
Yeah, and thank you for that. I mean, we're proud of the commitment in this space, and we believe that at every level of our organization, we need to represent the external market, and believe culture is essential to our ability to attract, sustain, promote great talent. And if you think about it, it's the tone at the top. And at Nationwide, that's always started with our board, come down to our executive team, and then it moves into what we would call that mood in the middle. And we're really proud of the work that's taken place and the results. So if you think about our board diversity from our independent director standpoint, it's 26% diverse. My senior team is 25% diverse, so that's minority and female. And at every level of our organization, there's a focus on ensuring strong representation. If we don't look and feel like the communities we represent, how can we understand what their needs are? And I think that's the bottom line. This isn't about doing things, it's about doing things right and doing the right thing. And I think you can have these incredible business outcomes if you focus on exactly that. So representation begins with a commitment to culture, and then you've got to have a plan, and then you've got to hold people accountable for it. So we've got great partnerships to help identify talent. Our culture supports other people's success. We require diverse talent slates, and a diverse talent slate is more than one diverse individual on the slate. We have an entry-level pipeline, and we hire through those all the time, including our college pipelines. And then in my annual scorecard, because those things that get measured get done, I have a D&I objective. It gets cascaded to all the leaders below me because theirs roll up to be me. And then the board meets with one of my leaders each month to review pipeline strategy, people strategy, and a real focus on diversity, engagement, succession. So if you can't tell, I'm just really proud of what Nationwide's done in this space, but we've got miles to go before we sleep here as well. We're constantly working to address gaps. We're using more data, putting together stronger plans.
Okay. And Aneel, what about at Workday?
So, from the get-go, when we started the company 15 years ago, I think the underlying foundation was a spirit of diversity and inclusion. And I will say that, at this point, half of our senior leadership are female, 40% of the senior vice presidents are female. I can't say that I proactively set out to get to those numbers. I actually think that these group of women were the right people for the job, and our value system encouraged the right people for the job into the right roles. And I think that's, so I'm very proud of that. Our CIO, our CMO, CHRO, our Chief Customer Officer, our President and CFO are all female. I think that's pretty unusual in the tech industry. But when I look at those amazing individuals, every one of them is the best person for that job from within Workday. So that played out really well. We're making that same progress on the board. I will say that I was a bit late in thinking about the board. I was much more focused on the management team, but I think that I think we're 30% diverse on the board. We need to do better than that, and we'll get there. Our myths that we have to work on are Black and Latinx people as part of senior leadership. That we just don't have enough of a pipeline, and shame on me. If you don't have enough of a pipeline when the big jobs come up, you don't have someone to choose, and that is that the entry level we're fine. We need to find a better way to mentor and bring our diverse talent forward beyond just females into leadership positions. One of the reasons why Workday is a great place to work for females is because females outside of Workday say, hey, I can go there and I can get the top job. There's not a glass ceiling at Workday, and we have to do the same for people of color, and we have not done that yet, and that is a big driving force over the next several years for us.
Okay, and then the just what you just walked through in terms of the women in those top roles, and those are critically important roles. The only other company I know that can rattle off the fact that those roles are filled by women is Sephora. So but besides that, so I think that you've got good wind on the back of your sails, and yeah, we all have a ways to go, and we know that now's the time to actually do it. And as we think about can
I just add one thing?
Sure.
As we're focused on diversity, I think it's really important for Workday and for other companies not to lose sight of continued progress for women in leadership. We can't forget about that.
Yeah.
It's and not or.
Yeah, there you go. And you can focus on something on the road and still see a lot and make progress. So it's not that your point that we can focus on one group and take care of all. At the same time. It's not one at the expense of the other. Just like my children, there's certain days that one gets all the attention. It doesn't mean I don't love the other one, but we have to make those kinds of decisions. And I'm going to move into the partnerships, but just before that, the really part of the difficult conversations that Kirt was talking about, and I know Aneel you've had, and probably our business, A Great Place to Work. This is what has really driven most of the demand over the past 3 months, helping organizations have these. And the Netherlands this morning, where I was talking to Black employees who their employees say, we don't have racial problems in the Netherlands. That's only the US. And they're like, are you kidding me? But some people have a different view of the reality of life compared to others. What are you personally doing for your racial stamina? what are you personally doing, reading, thinking about, pursuing to make sure you're learning more? And Kirt, I'll start with you, and then Aneel, I'll come to you.
Yeah, I think that's great. And that's one of the things that's come from our conversations. And what I've tried to do, Michael, is to openly admit I will never know what it's like to be a person of color. That will never take place. But I can do my dangdest to reach out and ask people and have open conversations. And here's what I believe about nationwiders, people in the United States, people in the world. If you ask their permission, they're more than happy to sit down and have that conversation with you. If you're polite about it and you open your heart, they will have that conversation with you. So what I'm attempting to do is we have coffee with Kirt sessions. We sit down and we talk about what's going on in people's minds. Or more recently, over the last 7 months, we tried to slant that towards the conversation about racial inequity and some of the other things that are going on in the world. And I just think it comes down to that, having relationships, asking people, can I borrow on this relationship, and will you help me to learn? And there's all kinds of things. Google is a wonderful thing. And if you ask people, favorite books that they might recommend or articles, we pass them around as a management team. But I also think there's some partnerships out there. And one of the things that we have found, relationships go both ways. So if you think about the historically Black college and universities, the relationship we have there goes back almost 30 years. And the investments there provide us not only a pipeline for talent, but provide us with relationships, and we're going deeper with those relationships right now. So thanks for asking that question.
Sure. Aneel?
Well, first of all, I read every book you tell me to read, Michael. And, I would also say that, I think we've known each other for 6 or 7 years now. I just greatly appreciate your friendship, and you've helped me, understand more of the issues. I have 2 Black employees who are my mentors for me to understand the experience of Black employees at Workday, but also the experience in particular. One of them is a Black male. What's life like as a Black male in the U.S.? And one of the things he told me early on, and so I do these sessions weekly with these 2 individuals. He said, I feel safe at home and in the office. I'm always nervous when I'm driving in my car. And I just thought that would just hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, well, that's just a tough way to have to live. This is a huge issue. We have to be, vigilant to get to a better place as a country. And I didn't have that insight before. And so and in return, for what it's worth to them, one of the issues we've had is a lack of mentors for Black employees. So I'm mentoring the 2 of them on their careers. So it's a good trade-off. And I've learned a ton, and I hope they would say they've learned a ton. And they've both become very good friends, and we have very open, candid conversations. And the real mix of it is, or the thrust of it is, I'm not your CEO. I'm your person at Workday. That took a while for them to get over that. They're over that now, and so I get really direct feedback, and it's awesome. It's awesome, and it's the best way to learn what's going on. Is just talk to people. Talk to people in the environment. I've learned a ton, and it's helped shape what Workday is going to do to address it.
That's great. That's great.
And Michael, the other thing that we think is important is, people don't intend to have these biases. They really don't. And so one of the things that we're doing is, and again, tone at the top, it's starting with our board, moving to our executive group, and all the way through our 28,000 associates. We are going to have unconscious bias training for all of our associates. So we're going to go through the 28,000. If you become a new associate at Nationwide, automatically you'll be enrolled and you go through it. People in most cases don't have an intention of being biased. We all need to understand we've got our blind spots, and we have this unconscious bias that takes place. We need to learn about it and to think about it deeper.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Well, in terms of partnerships, I want to hear a little about really partnerships in general, but more specifically between your companies. So Kirt, again, starting with you and the work that Nationwide does in the community. some incredible work. I've heard about the hospital, and if you could just let your audience know, like, why would you do that? And then things that you've done, to partner with others, including Workday, which are clearly all about better for the world.
Yeah, and thank you for that. So we look at it and say, it's really not even partnerships. We believe we have partnerships and then they form relationships. And here's what I believe. I believe when relationships matter, Nationwide wins. And one of the special call outs I wanted to make today is Aneel recently through Workday had a golf event here, a PGA event here in Columbus, and contributed $1 million from the golf event proceeds to Nationwide Children's Hospital, and that was through the Workday Charity Open on the PGA Tour. And that's going to make such an impact. And oftentimes we get feedback, well, Nationwide Children's Hospital is in Columbus, Ohio. That's good for Columbus, Ohio. We actually had 1.6 million patient visits last year, 1.6 million patient visits from all 50 states in the union, from 52 countries in the world, and not a single family or child was turned away because they didn't have the ability to pay. And we think if you do things right, it will come back to you in spades. And other partnerships, a new one that we announced just last week, the Financial Alliance for Racial Equity, so it spells out FAIR if you followed that. It's a new coalition with partnership with financial services. Here's what we're trying to do. We're trying to help build economic wealth in diverse communities and increase the number of Black financial advisors and professionals in our industry. It needs to start there as well. I've also mentioned a couple of the partnerships we have, the NAACP, the Legal Defense Fund, the Bail Project. We're just really proud of the commitments that we have. And, Black Enterprise, the Latino Professionals for America, the Human Rights Campaign, Latino Style. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And, we do appreciate having relationships with people like Workday because we have this supplier diversity program that helps to generate more than 3,400 jobs and $1 billion in spending for minorities, women, lesbian, gay, and veteran-owned businesses. And if we don't stay focused on that, it won't take place. So again, special thanks to Aneel for the $1 million to Nationwide Children's Hospital.
Aneel?
Well, let me just first say that Nationwide is one of the role models that my co-founder Dave and I have had really from the get-go in terms of a company that gives back and is really involved with the community. It's almost like a lost art. If companies need to have a soul, and I really believe that, especially in today's world, that companies and CEOs need to have a soul, and they need to take care of their communities. So, Mark Benioff's been a good friend and mentor to me over the years. Before we went public as a company, he really encouraged me to set up a foundation, and encouraged Dave as well. So we set up the Workday Foundation with stock before our IPO. That has been really the backbone of our giving over the last 8 years. Our biggest investment has been in an organization called Year Up, and Year Up is a great platform for underprivileged youth getting jobs in high paying sectors like technology and healthcare. And then, as we've expanded that, that was the platform when we got a chance to work with Kirt and his team on the golf tournament and be a supporter to the amazing thing that Nationwide has done in Columbus and in Ohio. And as you know, like, people from all over the world go to that hospital. It's an amazing hospital. So it was very, it was a great opportunity for us. And we brought our key partnership along to that tournament as well, which is Eat, Learn, Play, the foundation that Steph and Aisha Curry started to take care of youth eat, learn, and play, starting out in Oakland, but hopefully will become a national initiative. During the pandemic, Eat, Learn, Play, with a little bit of support from Workday, mostly done by Steph and Aisha, I think has served 5 million meals in the Oakland area. Really, really remarkable work. So I just, it feels good to give back. It's the right thing to do. Our employees love it. Our employees, for them, it means a lot that the company they work for is doing the right thing, and it makes them more, frankly, loyal and committed to our company because they see that we are a force for good. And so again, let me end on Nationwide's been one of those role models for a long time, and we're a younger company, and so we just try to learn from the leaders like Nationwide. And I will also say, Kirt, I love your ads with Peyton Manning. Those are some of the funniest ads I've ever seen. And he is such a big supporter of what you do in the community and the hospital.
And it really is, I spoke earlier about, we have partnerships, they become relationships. With Peyton and a number of the other people that are spokespeople, they've absolutely become part of our family. And what they have done privately to give back to Nationwide Children's Hospital, and some of the other philanthropics that we support, is just absolutely incredible.
And so this is, you're both leaders within cultures who have this view that isn't, for you both, it's not a view that you've put together in the past 12 months. There's a lot of that. This is clearly deeply in your roots and the roots of your organizations and your people. And your people are attracted to it and stay, as a result of this connection, feeling that business has this responsibility. And as Aneel says, has to have a soul to be a force for good. And which means solving some of these complex problems that we know we can't rely on government to solve these complex problems. Businesses can either just focus on business or can do that. You're both running organizations that have been committed from day one, as Aneel says. I would sure, for Aneel, he's like, I'm so happy Nationwide's a customer. I mean, it's like he wants to be associated with someone who talks like you talk, and probably the feeling is mutual. What is it that you both do? This is a question we often get in these sessions where people are working in organizations that aren't quite like that. And so the first question is the one I'm getting now, which is, how do I get a CEO to be like that? So I don't know what to say other than update your LinkedIn profile and I'd start looking at these two companies. But I think if you I don't really know how to answer that, but because, as you know, it's hard to talk somebody into something. In our work, and a CEO will sometimes say, how do I know that respecting my employees will improve my bottom line? And as Aneel knows, I'm like, oh good, I'm going to catch the early flight home, because there's nothing else for me to do. You can't talk somebody into what we're talking about. But what we can do, and the big challenge for all of us, is the middle of the organization. The middle of the organization, because we can have this viewpoint at the top, but in the middle, which is where most of the employee experience is affected, by managers and supervisors, what are you both doing to make sure that the values flow through? And therefore, this belief of business as a force for good is felt by managers and supervisors.
Well, so
or Aneel, okay, go ahead, Aneel.
Okay, so I'd say a couple things. First of all, Kirt and I both interact with a lot of CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. I'm personally involved with the Business Council and the Business Roundtable. And I have to say that during this last 12 months of crises, I've been so impressed with the heart and soul of so many of the CEOs of the biggest companies in the world. Doug McMillan, Mary Barra, Ken Frazier at Merck. They're stepping up and showing that companies do have souls. And I think there's enough of those great companies out there. If you're someone that's not happy where you're at, there's lots of choices. I've just been so blown away by the way many of these CEOs have stepped up to be forces for good. And they're running, the biggest companies in the world. Workday is 12,000 employees. We're small compared to these huge companies, and they can have a huge impact. In terms of what we do at Workday, you have to live and reward your value system. So that's number one. They can't be words. We reward people who do the right things, and if people are not doing the right things, we'll coach them. And if they can't get to the right things as it relates to our value system, they probably shouldn't be at Workday. The way that we're trying to drive through some of the initiatives today around diversity and inclusion is we set up that accelerator team of 20 dedicated people, and they're going to make recommendations on things like how to hire for diversity, getting rid of the bias. You know, Kirt mentioned unconscious bias. That's at every company. That's in all hiring processes. How do we get past that? And then we set up some OKRs around it. We are an OKR-driven company, objectives and key results. As a management technique, if you don't measure it, you can't improve it. And so we cascade those OKRs across the company to make sure that we're all striving for those same goals. And I would say, as the as for the accelerator team, it's a big undertaking to make a recommendation. And they have a very captive audience, but it's gonna be some difficult changes, I think, for all companies to get it right.
Yeah, thank you, Aneel. Kirt?
Yeah, and I think it's one of those, there are these, what we would call mission moments that matter, right? How are you living your mission? And I think it comes back to partnerships. And Workday's been a partner of ours for a number of years now. And I do remember the transition when it took place, and it went pretty doggone well, but there were probably a couple of bumps in the road. And what we saw from the Workday people was, when there was this moment of truth, they stepped up, they did what they said they would do, it got addressed, and we moved on with it. So how do you find relationships like that, and how do you model your own company around that? And I think it really comes down to, first, you talked about the middle, but you've got to have that tone at the top that sets expectations and says, one of the expectations we have is we value people and we're going to live our values. I would offer there are three types of employees in the world. There are probably people who live the values and hit the numbers. Wow, we'd all like to have even more of them. Then you have the people who live the values and maybe they don't hit the numbers. I would offer you need to find a different place for them, because values-based people are really hard to find, and maybe they aren't compensated as much. Maybe it's a different role. They will appreciate it when you do it. Here's the toughie, I think, for a lot of enterprises out there. How do you take people who are hitting the numbers but not living the values that you've asked them to live? Those are hard for people to address. And one of the things I appreciate nationwide, we've said, if you don't live the values, you can't work here anymore. And I think it starts with us hiring patriots versus missionaries, or patriots versus mercenaries, and then continuing to live with that. So communicate your expectations, hire for attitude, look for the patriots versus the mercenaries, and live by example, and do business with people who follow those same examples as well.
Okay. I've heard Aneel say almost the exact same thing. So, that's consistent. And so for each of you, as we wrap up, as we look at I'd like to say the next 100 years, but for right now, I kind of feel like the next 4 to 5 years is the appropriate space and time, and what we've learned, over this unusual year, about each other, about our nation, and about our people, and as you look forward in leading your organizations, really what's at the top of your mind? You both run successful organizations, and so while the execution's challenging, you know how to do that. But what is new that's in the front of your mind, and that you think will affect the way you lead and your team will need to lead over the next 4 to 5 years? Either one of you can, whoever wants to go first.
Aneel?
So I do think these crises moments, whether it's the pandemic or the social issue, they really force you to get back to what matters, core values, get back to having a purpose. Our purpose is to inspire a brighter workday for all. And I think in many ways that is the silver lining. We've gotten back to care about what matters. this is an amazing country. I believe it's the greatest country in the world, and I say that, and I know I might offend all of our international employees, but I think this is the greatest country in the world, and we can do better. We got to drive out the political divisiveness, independent of which side of the political spectrum you're at. They have to be better. They have to get along. I believe in the good of people, and I think in 4 or 5 years we're going to be a better country, a better society. And I actually hope on this topic of racism, the U.S. can go from having a really bad history to actually being a leader on how to address it. And so that's front and center. And I'm an optimist, but I believe in the goodness of people, and I think that will shine through over the next 4 or 5 years.
Wow. It's interesting. Recently, I was reminded that growing up, my mom would often say, just remember, the time is always right to do what is right. The time is always right to do what is right. And I'd mentioned it later on in life, and somebody said, well, you know who said that, don't you? And I said, well, yeah, my mother did. And what they pointed out was, well, your mother may have repeated it, but the original quote came from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So the time is right to always do the right. So where I'm going with that is the issue of social injustice. I mean, I just think the time's right to do what's right now, and we've got to act with urgency. And I think if we do, and from a nationwide standpoint, we're going to focus on our mission, we're going to focus on our values and our culture, and we're going to keep in mind that our number one value is we value people. So we're going to continue to leverage our strategic partnerships, people like Aneel with Workday here, so we can be a catalyst for change. And we're going to remain committed to listening to understand, not listening to respond. And I think that's really, really important. It's time for all of us to sit down, open up our minds, our ears, our hearts, listen to understand, not to respond. And, ultimately, if we want real change to take place, it's going to take all of us. It's going to take all of us. And we're going to have to hold ourselves accountable for the actions that we take or we don't take. And I would say there's a lot of situations in the world, the fact that people aren't taking a stand and aren't holding themselves accountable is just as bad as having a negative action. So my hope is we embrace the journey together. And Michael, I'm just glad you didn't hold me accountable for the next 100 years. We can make this happen. We can make this happen. And it's going to be far less than 100 years before we see real change if we all agree and work together on this.
Oh, well, Kirt, thank you, and Aneel. And there is, I don't know if you can see this, but that says the quote, your mom's quote, the time is always right to do what's right. And a great place to work. This is all over the place. This is on t-shirts, and we love it and we feel like the time is now. And, both of your organizations, you've been inspirational for everybody who listens, including myself, meaning running organizations like yours, you both make it look easy. Your tone, your tenor, your enthusiasm, but it's really, really difficult. And it's much easier to just focus on shareholder value or on EBITDA or cash flow. That's much easier, much simpler, but you're not. You're doing that and everything else too. And so that's the inspirational part. And for everyone else, you're all employees who are watching this, we all have a responsibility too. Everybody has a responsibility here. I live in a country where you have organizations where people feel like they belong. They feel like they belong. And you're always working to make sure that they feel like they're part of a deep relationship where they're cared for as a person. I live in a country where as soon as I turn my phone on, I don't feel like I belong here. It's every day that I read something and it's like, wow. Okay, but here's the thing. I stick to the facts. I know I belong here. So feelings aren't real for me. In that regard, I know I belong here, just like anyone else. And so because I belong here, I have actions. There's things I need to do. And nobody can affect whether I'm going to do those or not. I'm going to simply do them. One of them is vote. That's what I am going to do, and get everybody to vote. And I can't believe how many of my friends are all psyched up and tell me how bad everything is. And I said, did you vote? And they're like, no, I didn't. And I'm like, okay. So either don't talk to me again until you vote, So this is the responsibility part. A feeling is one thing, but it's just not real. It's the fact. And the fact is, I belong here. Everybody else belongs here. And I'm no better or worse than anybody else. And I have an action and a responsibility to make sure that this is a great nation, just like employees in your companies have an action, a responsibility to make sure your organizations are a great place to work for all. So I'm fired up, and you two had something to do with it. And I really appreciate it for what we're doing. We know what we have to do. And I'm inspired knowing, you know, how many people, like you said, Aneel, that are lit up now. And are going to focus on holding themselves accountable to measurable actions so that our organizations look different, feel different, and are different a couple of years from now compared to where they are today. So I know you're both super busy, like crazy busy, and certainly appreciate you coming together to give this gift to so many people that will continue to spread out. I know your people watch this and they feel proud, which is great because they should. So thank you very much. And Julian, I'll hand it over to you to take us home.
Right on. I mean, I was sitting here enthralled with this conversation. Talk about fired up, Michael. I mean, it's not just the 3 cups of coffee and the green tea that I've had, but knowing what it is that you all are doing every day, I appreciate it. So I want to thank you, Kirt and Aneel, for your leadership, and in particular, you know, your optimism and the work that you're doing every day to really impact the people that work for you and the communities. And I want to thank everyone who joined us today. Of course, the summary and the recording will be shared next week. But our October Better Together conversation will feature a familiar global brand, DHL Express. So make sure that you've signed up on our Better Together landing page and share it with your friends. Make sure that they all know and they can join into that conversation. If you'd like to share your experience or you have additional questions, please send them to michael_bush@greatplacetowork.com. And on behalf of Great Place to Work, thank you, Kirt and Aneel, for the time sharing your experiences with us all. And thank every one of you out there, because we know that we're better together. Take good care.
Thank you.
Take care. Thanks very much. Thanks, guys.